Mick Andrews is a champion in trials riding. He is OSA's star. Mick can make his bike go almost anywhere, over enormous obstacles, over huge rocks, through deep slippery streams, up near vertical cliffs, and back down again. Mick started riding when he was 15 years old. It was an old street bike, but even then, Mick spent many happy hours experimenting in the fields near his home. One day, a friend let Mick try his real trials machine, and Mick proceeded to outride him. Mick then purchased a $40 rigid-frame James and competed successfully with many top riders. When Mick was 17, his father, realizing his potential, bought Mick a brand-new factory AJS. The first time out on the AJS, he beat Sammy Miller, who was riding a 500 Ariel. But Mick and Sammy knew that the two-strokes were far superior, and so they both went to work for Bull Taco. Mick stayed with Bull Taco until he made his big switch to OSA, and then he was on his way. How do you learn to ride a trials bike? Well, in Mick's own words, you start by going up and down small banks. Then try small rocky creek beds till you get used to the bike. Then you build up to the impossible things. To do anything difficult, you have to have a trials machine. You try a difficult section, and if you don't clear it after 4 times, 6 times at the most, you go back to an easier section to get relaxed. You'll never do it if you keep at it too long. You get much too tense. You tackle everything in a different way, like a tree trunk. Open the throttle halfway to lift the front wheel, ride over and close the throttle. Go down slowly. The whole thing is in keeping your balance. American riders tend to go too fast everywhere. If they do hit anything at the speed they're going, it throws them completely off balance. In Europe, they lay out crazy sections or very fast sections, and that's the hardest thing for me. Watching Mick practice for an hour or so, you realize that he's a perfectionist. He'll keep trying a section or an individual obstacle, like an odd-shaped boulder, until he's satisfied that he can do it perfectly. Not just once, but over and over. Let's watch the Scottish six-day champion practice. American riders are becoming more interested in true trials riding. They're buying bikes designed just for trials work. They practice many hours and travel hundreds of miles to compete. They're getting better. With this in mind, Mick Andrews came to the States in August of 1970 and conducted a school and trial in Cummington, Massachusetts. Cummington is a small hill town deep in the Berkshires. The terrain is rocky, hilly, and covered with large pines. At the bottom of the course area is the Westfield River, a gentle stream with a rocky bed. The Berkshire riders and Mick Andrews had chosen a trial site that was very demanding. Class started Saturday morning with Mick at the helm. About 100 riders turned out to get it firsthand from the master. The first section, a large rocky area, started with a 2-foot step-up, followed by a 90-degree turn, followed by a 1-foot step-up, followed by Mick, who told you what you had done wrong. Now, when you have a class of bike riders who are interested in learning something new, you also have a hodgepodge. People, abilities, and bikes, all or part unsuitable for trial work. This makes for interesting happenings. It was soon obvious to the participants that a proper bike for trial work was not a street scrambler, a road bike, an enduro machine, or any other number of modified bikes. A true trial bike is a specialized piece of precision machinery. The frame is low to the ground and narrow. The seat is very small, so it won't get in the way of the rider's legs, as almost all trial riding is done on the pegs. The shocks are large and set up for the rider's weight, and they have to have a very long throw. The engine is detuned for very stable low RPM work and instant response. A heavy flywheel smooths out the power strokes. A proper trials engine doesn't have any flat spots anywhere in its power range. A trials bike is light. The pegs are set further back. The handlebars are narrow. The tires are special trials knobbies with just a little different tread pattern. A trials bike doesn't need electrics, horns, brakes, lights, etc. The idea is to keep it functional and to keep it light. So there you have the perfect trials bike. Once you ride this kind of bike, you realize that they're different in some very nice ways, like handling ease and responsiveness. Every professional trials man sets up his bike to his own liking, and Mick is no different. He ran medium soft shocks and 5 pounds of air in the special rear tire. Mick would actually retune his engine before certain types of sections or if atmospheric conditions changed. When Mick rides, you realize how much he depends on throttle response. Watch his right hand. When Mick is working a section, the engine changes RPMs many times throughout a short period of time. The engine is used to pick up the front wheel, to firmly set the front wheel for turning. It's used to gain momentum at just precisely the right instant and to stop momentum. It's used to catch your balance with a fast burst of throttle.
The first thing to do when you arrive at this section is to pick the path on which you're going to take. And then after that, you look at the ground and then decide how much grip there is in the ground and then choose the gear. This particular section would be second gear and medium speed or medium throttle opening.
One of the sections of the trial itself was the Westfield Riverbed. We needed shots of Mick in the water, so he demonstrated this section for the cameras. Watch the way the front and rear wheel continually slip and slide. Now observe closely the many minute corrections he makes to his balance. He continually shifts his weight and shifts the weight of the bike. When you ride the pegs, you have 2 balance points, the mass of the bike and the mass of your body. By working the 2 weight masses with each other or counteracting one another, you can obtain a precise balance. If you think you're pretty sharp on a woods bike, give your local riverbed a try. It makes one humble.
The part with this section is keeping the correct speed round the corner to get round this very tight turn round the tree. With this turn, you have to go round using the clutch slightly. Just medium revs and just slightly with the clutch, and everything should be okay. But on full lock.
Every trial you'll attend has at least one section that's laid out with several right-angle low-speed turns. Mick did them one better. His section had several right-angle turns, but Mick added large rocks with 2-foot step-ups that immediately followed the right-hand turns. This section of the class did in even the local champions. Mick zeroed it with ease. His trick was a right-angle turn on the back wheel and hitting the throttle just as he made the corner, thereby getting up the rock with no problems. Mick's most repeated suggestion here was use of throttle and speed control. Most of the sections were so dark that the color cameras were unable to shoot satisfactory footage except in certain areas. After a break for lunch, class reconvened with an easy long section with gentle climbs, down hills, obstacles, and many right-angle turns. This section provided Mick a chance to watch his pupils over a longer period. He was able to spot many errors and correct them before they became bad habits.
four-stroke over the two-stroke because of the available torque in the mud and over rocks, what have you. The two-stroke has an advantage where they can use a heavier flywheel on long uphill muddy sections, which is an advantage over the four-stroke. Design-wise and what have you, the two-strokes now are probably further advanced than the four-strokes at this point in time.
This section was in the vicinity of a sheer rock face, about 6 feet high, set about 75 degrees perpendicular. This was the ultimate demonstration of Mick's skill. He approached the rock with a little speed, gained on a short-angled path. A few feet from the rock, he did a wheelie, and just as his wheels hit the rock, Mick poured it on, and the bike's momentum easily carried him over the cliff. The spectators loved it. Mick did his thing about 5 times for the camera crew. Mick was asked to go down the rock, and this was a little more difficult because he had to do a wheelie while going down the near vertical face of the cliff. If he hit straight down, the front wheel would have stopped, and Mick and the bike would have gone end over end. This will probably be your last chance to see a wheelie being accomplished while diving off a rock. Mick then borrowed a bike from one of the class members and almost didn't make it. The bike's engine was not tuned as finely as Mick's, and it let him down when he needed it most. It hesitated for a fraction of a second, and Mick lost his momentum, but he made it with one little dab. There were no volunteers to try this one. This little feat of expertise finished off the classes for the day. The rains came just as the spectators and contestants began to leave. The torrential rain Saturday night and Sunday morning left some of the sections in shambles. The Berkshire riders and Mick hadn't figured on 2 days of rain when they laid out the course. If these same conditions had existed at a regular trials event, the event would have been canceled. But Mick checked out the sections and made them all look like child's play. The event was on.
New England Trials Association scoring works on a maximum of 5 points lost per section. Now the scoring works this way. One touch with your foot is called a dab and costs 1 point. Two dabs, 2 points. 3 dabs or continuous footing without losing momentum, forward momentum, is 3 points. Out of bounds is 5, and a stop in the section is 5. Once you have accumulated 5 points, that's the maximum you can lose in a section.
The local experts were falling all over themselves. Because of high water, the river section had to be abandoned. If Mick could have placed a snorkel on his bike and himself, I'm sure he'd have zeroed the river as well. The experts all attained scores that were 3 and 4 times as large as normal, but they all agreed that to improve themselves, they had to tackle terrain that was much harder than normal. Mick seemed to be playing around with some of the sections, but he still had a hard time losing 5 points. Canadian John Jones took high point with a much modified bike. Jones lost 61 points. Many experts lost over 100 points. And so there was no doubt in anyone's mind that Mick Andrews was champion. And he proved it, August 22nd and 23rd in Cummington, Massachusetts.